If you think the ongoing crisis in the Middle East will wrap up sooner than later, you are looking at the wrong data. Right now, behind closed doors, global energy analysts have officially torn up their base case models. The optimistic recovery scenario for global oil, refined fuels and natural gas isn't just on hold, it is dead. Washington DC is actively climbing higher up the escalation ladder against Iran, systematically targeting infrastructure to degrade Tehran's long-term military projection and economic backbone. Meanwhile, Iran is firing back, striking critical desalination facilities in Kuwait and taking out key transit causeways connecting Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. We are officially entering what intelligence and commodity experts are calling the new normal. Vessel flows to the Strait of Hormuz haven't just slowed down, they've completely collapsed. Refining crack spreads for diesel and gasoline are exploding to levels we haven't seen since the chaotic early days of the 2022 Ukraine invasion. LNG supply is facing a multi-year structural deficit that could lock in energy shortages until late 2027. And inside the White House, Team Trump is quietly debating nuclear option economic policies, including an emergency ban on US refined fuel exports. So in this video, we're breaking down the classified level data, the tectonic shift in global trade flows, and the precise mathematical timeline for when oil hits $100 to nearly $110 a barrel. Smash the like button, subscribe, and let's dive straight into the numbers. Let's look at the hard data. Up until now, consensus Wall Street modeling assumed that trade flows out of the Persian Gulf would temporarily bottleneck and then quickly redistribute. The assumption was simple. Production ramp-up speed would be the main bottleneck, not shipping capacity. That model is officially trash now. Right after the initial Memorandum of Understanding, or the MOU, we saw a temporary spike in outflows. Now these were just vessels that were already loaded, rushing to get out while they could. But then came the drone strikes, the ship hits, the missile strikes and the sea mines. Outflows dropped off an absolute cliff. We are looking at a protracted constraint where flows remain crippled for months. Even into next year, shipping transits through the Hormuz are only projected to recover to 50 to 60% of pre-conflict norms. So why does this matter to your wallet? Because it flips the entire global energy market on its head. Countries with bypass pipelines, like the Saudi Arabia and the UAE, can reroute some crude overland and get their exports back to normal. But nations and producers without alternative bypass routes are trapped. These are Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Iraq, because empty tankers are not brave enough to enter the Gulf to load crude and refined products, and crude production inside the region would be physically forced to shut down. Instead of rebuilding global inventories by the end of the year, we are locked into a massive continuous inventory draw cycle. That means one thing, an incredibly fragile market where a single weekend escalation can push oil prices straight into the $100 and $110 range. If you think crude oil picture is alarming, wait until you look at the refined products, gasoline, diesel and jet. This is where everyday consumers get hit the hardest. Let's bring up the refining crack spreads. Now this, very simple, is the price of refined petroleum products like diesel, gasoline and jet fuel, less the cost of crude. Notice what's happening in New York Harbor right now. Gasoline cracks are hovering around $60. Diesel cracks are pushing an eye-watering $80. That is 2 to 3 times higher than normal levels for this time of the year. Back in the spring of 2022, when the Russians invaded Ukraine, we saw a similar massive surge in refining margins. But back then, the global market just needed to reshuffle trade routes. Today, it's fundamentally different. We are dealing with a structural extended loss of actual physical supply. This is the main difference. And this is being severely compounded by ongoing losses in Russian diesel exports because of Ukrainian strikes on its refineries. Refining throughput forecasts across the globe have been brutally slashed. Middle Eastern refiners are down by roughly 1 million barrels a day right through the end of the year due to constrained export logistics in the Strait of Hormuz. The Chinese are slashing runs by another 1 million barrels a day, keeping Chinese refining throughput far below 2025 levels. So the global total for Q3 runs revised down by nearly 2 million barrels a day at least, and the fourth quarter down by 3 million barrels a day. The bottom line? Transport fuels are facing a 9-month structural deficit. For fuel supplies to rebalance, retail prices at your local pump have to surge high enough to destroy demand. And this is where we're going. Now let's talk about liquefied natural gas, or LNG. This is where the long-term structural damage gets truly terrifying for global power grids. The Middle East Gulf represents a staggering 150 million tons per annum of global LNG capacity. To put that into perspective, the entire global market last year was about 430 million tons. So 1/3 of all your LNG comes from this region. The damaged capacity is around 13 million tons. These were the two mega trains of LNG at Qatar that were directly hit by a ballistic missile on the 18th of March. And how long is it going to take to come back? At least multiple years. There is massive expansion projects in Qatar. Now these have been slammed with severe delays due to the ongoing war. And we're not going to see any new capacity in this region, not even this year or next year, but possibly in 2028. So there's about 100 million tons of capacity that cannot go outside the Gulf. Now here's the dirty secret with Qatari LNG that most mainstream media outlets miss. You cannot just produce natural gas in a vacuum. North Field gas, from where Qatar gets its bulk of its gas, is rich in also associated liquids, condensates and sulfur. To keep the LNG facilities running, Qatar needs a continuous fleet of diverse ships moving in and out the strait, lifting condensate and sulfur also. So without free, open transit through the Hormuz, Qatar's entire logistic chain collapses. This isn't a minor hiccup. It creates a massive supply vacuum in global gas markets. The European gas benchmarks like TTF and the Asian benchmarks like JKM are setting up for an explosive rally this winter, with price targets easily adding another $10 to $20 as winter approaches. And this brings us to the ultimate wildcard, Trump and Washington, D.C. With US national average gasoline prices rapidly closing in on $4 a gallon and projected to head much, much higher, the political pressure on Trump is reaching a boiling point. So what desperate moves are actually being debated in the Oval Office right now? Let's rank them. The very first is the refined product export ban. I'd say it's about 35% odds of happening and rising. This is a fierce, active debate inside the administration. While the Department of Energy, the Interior, and even the Vice President have resisted export restrictions, if pump prices breach $4.50 or $5, Trump may overrule them and shut off fuel exports to keep US gas cheap. Then number 2 is the RFS waivers, the Renewable Fuel Standard waivers. I'd say there's about 40% odds of happening. The interior prices right now for refiners have exploded to about $2.40. Refiners claim that compliance costs add about 30 to 40 cents per gallon at the pump. The White House is exploring small refiners' exemptions or general waivers to grant immediate cost to refiners. So this is more often than not, this could happen. And then there's the Strategic Petroleum Reserve releases, the SPR. Now, while not currently active, an emergency massive draw remains the go-to tool if crude breaches triple digits, which is not very far off. And the fourth option for Trump is boots on the ground in the Middle East. I'd say there's about maybe 20% chances of happening. If a full-scale ground invasion of the US into Iran, is that coming? Analysts put a major ground invasion of just 10 to 15%. However, limited ground insertions, special forces raids, or island operations along Iran's southern coast carry a slightly higher probability as Trump attempts to physically neutralize missile sites and secure transit corridors. But the problem is, Iran has a very strong track record of continuing to produce drones. So even if Trump and the US military removes these drones and missiles from the coastal areas, all Iran has to do is move further inland. So here is the cold, hard reality. Neither Washington nor Tehran is in a position to back down right now. The initial diplomatic memorandum of understanding was a temporary illusion, but structural trust has been completely destroyed. We are officially locked into a dangerous, spiky muddle-through, a brutal cycle of short diplomatic pauses, followed by a sharp, unpredictable military escalation. For global markets, the era of cheap, friction-free energy transit through the Middle East is over for the foreseeable future. Whether you're trading crude, managing a portfolio, or just trying to budget your daily commute, the next month is going to be wild. So what's your prediction? Will Trump sign an executive order banning fuel exports if gasoline hits $4? Or are we heading straight for boots on the ground in Iran? Sound off in the comments below. If you found this deep dive valuable, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an emergency briefing. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.